Point that comes up right now. And wonderful good morning to you, Grenada, Caribbean, Caprini, Martinique, the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. It is Friday, it's the 19th day of the month of November. And saying a special good morning to our listeners and our viewers, that is, on GBN's Channel 7, Channel 11 for our viewers, that is 7 and 11, Channel 24 in cable. Those of you in Classic 105.5 and 105.9 on the FM band, or you're probably joining us via the World Wide Web at www.gbn.gd, or we say thanks to those of you that's on Facebook or on YouTube. Good morning and welcome to The Point. And my name is Joseph Cadore, and my guest this morning is President of the Grenada Union of Teachers, Mr. Jude Bartholomew. Mr. Bartholomew, good morning and welcome to the program, sir.
Yes, good morning to you. Good morning to the GBN family. Good morning to the nation. Good morning to all our teachers and persons who are listening via the various medium.
Thank you. I think before we...
Yes.
I'm almost getting the feeling that probably we were both going to extend Happy International Men's Day to each other. Why do I get the feeling that's what was about to come off your lips?
Yes, that is okay, and that is in keeping with principles. Before I do that, I just always like to give a quick blessing to our program that I'm on. So I ask Almighty God to bless the program, bless the host, to bless me and bless all our listeners this morning, and to guide us in our deliberations with the Holy Spirit in Jesus' name.
And we all say amen. Let it be. Mr. Bartholomew, there's a lot since we last spoke. We've seen when we spoke, we were still awaiting word from the ministry regarding the re-entry into the classroom. We've since gone through the initial phase. Now, the second phase. Your assessment, your thoughts on how that transitionary process has actually played itself out.
So before I answer, as you said, International Men's Day, so I want to take the opportunity to wish all men on such a happy International Men's Day. I want to take the opportunity also to say that in spite of the situation and the challenges, with men and such, we have a lot of wonderful, men and young men around. Sometimes they don't really get the praise or the recognition that they deserve, but you have a lot of men who are really trying hard in terms of family and in society and such. And, yes, there are times when, men probably will, do something wrong and such, but the record must be placed there. It must be placed on record that in spite of all the situation, there are a lot of men who are really trying their family and really making meaningful contributions to society. And we must recognize them, we must appreciate them, and we must encourage them.
Indeed, you've articulated that quite well. I often say very often we tend to try them for their failures instead of encouraging them for the potential that resides within them. What's happening? Teachers-wise, you guys, we've seen your return to the classroom. How was the last 2-3 weeks been?
Yes, it's a pleasure, one way say, to return to the classroom. As I said before on the program that we had on other programs, that the teachers and principals and such never really had any problems in terms of returning to school, because that is what, and especially face-to-face, that is what the teachers, the principal, and everybody, that's what we love best, to be in the classroom face-to-face. Our really main concern, our major contention there was with the safety of our members, not only our members, we are pushing for the safety of teachers, the safety of students, and with the safety of students and teachers, then you'll have the safety of families and parents, and that is what we are pushing for. But we recognize at the same time, based on what the statistics have shown, that the COVID, such community spread seems to be coming down nicely. So we want to place on record here that we are happy in spite of the challenges, in the sense that, we understand the situation with the remote learning and the many challenges that it has, and then with children and even teachers and such would have been home for a long period of time. So this gives an opportunity for the children to come out, for the teachers to come out face to face and such, and that's what we said, that's what we love best. Nevertheless, in spite of that, we're always saying and put on record here, the parents and society need not be afraid in terms of the teachers and taking their responsibility towards the nation's children. The record will prove it time and time again again, in spite of all the difficult situations and the challenges that we face in this country, teachers stuck it out and do what they have to do and such to really, really prepare the children for the exams, and basically more than the exams and for life. But I would want to come in to say, in spite of that, and the teachers are trying, there are some challenges, and then we're going to look at it. All right? We're not going to only just dwell on the challenges in terms of that. We will try our best to overcome the challenges and such, but nevertheless, we have to be careful. And I think some of the challenges that we face in terms of internet services, the stability of the internet in schools, and that's why we're saying sometimes we have to be so very careful, because the push was for the teachers should go back, and you should go back face to face and everything, and you want the children to come. At home, we have always recognized that sometimes at home, the teachers have the internet services probably, and you look at the quantum of persons that are using it at home as compared to school. And so basically, even if there were some challenges at home, the teachers were reaching out to at least all the children, not all, but at least all, right? You go back to school, and then now you're faced with that problem. Now you cannot reach the children at home. So you try to remedy one situation where we said that there were some children who were not coming in online, and we tried to say, well, okay, go back to school face to face and such. And then when you're reaching the school now, you have a problem. Yes, you're trying to deal with the children in school, but you cannot adequately reach the children at home. And these are some of the inconsistencies that we were facing there. So what we're asking for the Ministry of Education and the government, they should have done, yes, the groundwork and the homework before, because that blame and that responsibility, you can't put it on the teachers. All right, so yes, you want to go back to face, but we have some challenges, it seems, with either Digicel or Flow in terms of with the speed and such. There are some schools where internet services is not working at all. So you might teach the children in school, and then you cannot reach them at home. So those at home now would be lagging. Then the other problem we face with the same face-to-face, we realized that the argument was that there are children while you're online who are missing out on basically the curriculum, and they weren't being taught. What will happen now in terms of, that's why we say dialoguing, reaching with the people, the teachers. These are the frontline people in terms of really and truly dealing with education, and have to teach the nation children and have to make the thing work. So you have to talk to them, discuss with them, and the teachers know, the teachers have the answer. Basically, you say they know how in terms of reaching the children and what to do. Many times you find, yes, the decisions are made at the higher level, and then it just trickle down, but they don't get a chance to input. And what we're saying there now, you see another problem there where it's difficult to teach sometimes the children. You have to teach the children in the school, and at the same time teach the children online the same thing. Now the argument was that basically there were children who were suffering and they miss out a lot. How do you then go in front of the classroom? This is a challenge, and teach the same thing to the very children that were missing out on time, because what they wanted you to do is to basically, while you're teaching in the classroom, to teach online at the same time. So it means now the teachers have to go back now and try to remedy that problem by developing strategies then now to teach the children separately, and those who are face to face, and at the same time try to bring along, because it seems what will happen, the children online will be bored because they will be doing the same thing over and over again. That's some of the problems. When you're talking about classroom space now, you're talking about the buildings. So you're talking about, and I did hear, I would say P.S. Andal put it down nicely in terms of when he said you must follow the 6 feet protocol, social distancing and such. Yes, we have to teach the children, and I guess basically rotation basis. So some children will come today, probably that another set will come tomorrow. We divide it in groups. Yes, we have no problem in that. But you still, even if on a rotational basis, because of classroom size in Grenada, some schools are bigger than the other. And then now you experience problem even in trying to keep the 6 feet protocol. And then one would argue that the PS did say, well, for schools, the 6 feet protocol should be strictly obeyed. And so these are some, but teachers, I would always say, no matter what the challenges that we might have and such, and the major concern, teachers would always find creative ways to accommodate in terms of the children and to do their best. And that's what we say. again. Added to that, there are some problems, just hold on, added to that, there are some problems in terms of with the devices for the children. Some of the devices not working, so not everybody that could utilize the devices. Then there are some problems, although the Ministry of Education did provide the devices for teachers and for students, which is a good thing, and we appreciate that. It seems to be with the school book program, the book program, where a lot of children do not have the books. Some parents, they can't afford to probably purchase the books, and it seems that probably the school book program is on hold. So when you teach online and you teach your children and you say, well, okay, turn to page, because there is no thing in the software such on the tablet to say, well, that is what the Ministry of Education and the government said at the beginning, that they were going to have basically the software and everything like books designed in the tablet so the children could use. There is no such thing. So what would happen now? You teach online and such, and you say, well, okay, get your books and such and turn to page 27 to do your math science language, and then you have a problem there. Added to that, and I will say that finally, added to that, we've seen some pressures, and that's what we are concerned about, that the teachers basically, and students too, and parents, always, you may say, under some psychological and emotional stresses, and sometimes we say it is unnecessary. We've seen some pressures. One would want to say, and to give credit to the Ministry of Education to balance the equation here, that probably going back to school face-to-face and the decisions that have been made probably was in good faith and well intended, probably from the Minister of Education, the PS and other persons. What you're finding now is the line of authority and the dissemination of information, and those in terms of powers from the Ministry of Education. We are having some problems, and teachers are experiencing problems. Principals to feel that they're under pressure with the DEOs and such, the district's education officer, not all of them, but some of them. In terms of it seems that there are some competitions there. And whereas one person in a district might say, this is what you have to do. So the children come in and such and such and such based on the various days and such, normal, they have no problem. But there are others who just want to dictate and to tell the schools and principals and even teachers that they have to come to school every day, that they have to bring all the children at the same time. And that is not what the PS said. That is not what the Ministry of Education said and such. And all those things are creating more problems and pressures for principals. So there is inconsistency in the message. And so what we're asking for the Ministry of Education to get it right, to talk to your DUs, talk to the persons who come into schools and such. Let there be one consistent message. Don't confuse the teachers and the principals and give them additional pressure and such more than they have already. And we say that we will already try, in spite of the situation, to get it right. And that's what we want.
Well, I mean, so much coming in there. So let's start with that seeming conflict of interest, that variation of information that's coming from the level of, let's say, the minister, the PS, and the other district of what specifically can you say to us in terms of, give us a specific example as to that conflict, that varied information that's creating that conflict in the classroom?
Well, basically, like one would say, based on what the PS and the Ministry of Education propose, like the exit classes and such, the amount of days that they should come,
right,
based on other situations, based on classroom space and classroom size, other persons, the discretion should be on the principal, on the teachers in terms of designing, all right? So based on your classroom space and your school space and everything like that. So a school A might say, well, okay, I might be able to bring in, based on my class, I might be, if I have 30 children in my class, and based on the 6 feet social distancing protocol, it looks as that rotation for me might be in terms of how the children might be able to come in 2 days. You divide your class in A, B, and C and such, or you try for 3 days. But then now, when you have this, and your principal might say, well, okay, we're going to do that. And then you have now somebody else now coming in behind the scene and say to that district or that principal, what we want you now to basically all the teachers coming in every day, the children coming in, all the children coming in every day. This is the sort of inconsistency and breaking the protocol and such, and that's what we have to be careful of.
Well, hold on. So take me through in terms of chain of command. I'm assuming in the ministry there is the minister, the PS, the Findlay, chief education officer, and there's a strict line of command, I'm assuming, in which directives and orders they are channeled through. These district officers, what exactly is their role? Isn't it to serve as a conduit between the schools and the ministry?
Yes, to serve as a conduit between the ministry and the school. Basically, so they have a heavy responsibility in terms of basically ensuring that the school curriculum and everything like that, so it's been properly executed, supervised and such. So what we are saying here, and we want to be careful.
But who do they take instructions from?
Well, I want to say they take instruction from the Ministry of Education, but one would want to see coming in there sometimes what the PS might say and the Minister for Education might say when it comes now to the trickling down in terms of individual, in terms of DU and others, you get a different message. There is an inconsistency there in the message.
What is the consequences in terms of chain of command if you do not follow the orders of that district officer and determine, and you decide, well, we have a memo from the ministry? Are there consequences? What are the potential fallouts?
Well, one would want to think, first of all, that let's go back now to examine that principals, one would say, would be under pressure. And this is sometimes I would want to see and what is happening. There are a lot of principals who, yes, they want to do the right thing and such, and they will do the right thing. But sometimes they're under pressure because when somebody comes and they tell you, you have to do this or you have to do that, sometimes the principal or the teachers might be afraid of the consequences. Let's remember, in this dispensation, there are a lot of principals who are acting, and we've seen a lot of this acting thing. And one will want to say, I do not want to go too far. I want to be careful here. But it seems as the normal way of doing things with the Ministry of Education in terms of whether the public service and things, a lot of dynamics and things have been changing. And one want to say that, and that could be my opinion, that there is a lot of political pressures and such on here, interference with some of these things that are creating problems. And a lot of the time, some of the principals, they are afraid probably sometimes to stand up and to say, well, yes, that is what I should do and that is what, but what they're afraid sometimes of the consequences and such. And so what we are saying here, we have to go back to the days when the thing have to be done right, both in the school and both from the Ministry of Education.
Consequences in terms of victimization, that's what you're referring to. Are you sensing that there's that victimization becoming a prevailing way of life within the Ministry of Education? Is that what you're pointing towards?
I don't want to come in there and to say directly victimization, but one would want to say send some pressure from the schools, from principals, from teachers, because you have to follow that line, even if they know, well, that is not what you should do and such. And that is what I'm saying. Where this thing have to be rectified is the authorities in terms of the Ministry of Education, and probably these things could be happening across ministries too. Too many persons just sometimes want to do what they want and such. So these things have to be rectified.
Where does the union come in now? What is the union's position on this seeming dichotomy that is being created there?
Well, the union function, one of the union's function is basically now to secure the interests of its members, to make sure that no victimization and all those things. But the union itself could only do so much, because sometimes the union, you will say to schools, or you will say to your principals, and you will say to your teachers, well, follow what the protocol says, follow what the Ministry of Education says in terms of the rotation, in terms of the 6 feet social distancing and everything like that. But you might have us, and not all principals, so we don't want to do that, but there might be, that's what I'm saying. The inconsistency here, when somebody, a principal, may know, well, okay, should I listen to the union in terms of obeying the union, in terms of what the union says in following the protocols, or sometimes now, should I listen to the DU, or should I listen to the Ministry of Education? And these are some of the things that would cause, for whatever varying reasons, would cause some of the problems.
But certainly, I mean, I guess in the sense that, and even that I am understanding that. So what has been the union's position in terms of having dialogue, communication with the ministry? Has that started, and what have you gotten any response? Has there been any formal communication to the ministry saying, listen, this is creating an issue with my membership?
Yes, we have been doing that all the time. In fact, we should have monthly meetings, and that is something that we did write the minister for to continue. So hopefully, very soon we'll have another monthly meeting to dialogue. But from time to time, these matters have been brought up. So one cannot say, or really doesn't have the empirical evidence to say basically that thing is happening basically from the high chain of command, from directly, let's say, from the Minister of Education or from the PS. But one would say basically at the lower level in the direct contact with school, that's where you're seeing the inconsistency there. So the union will continue to bring that up on all those things. But don't you forget also, and one have to take into consideration, it seems as it appears like the public service now, basically how things have been happening is not sometimes the normal way as how it used to happen in terms of those things. And it appears that basically some persons are doing their own thing, and that is what we want to rectify.
So is it, and make sure we understand, is it that people are doing their own thing, or is it that there are new protocols that's been rolled out that can it be asserted and assumed that maybe it's the GUT, the teachers union, the membership is having a problem with these new protocols that is aimed at introducing greater sense of professionalism?
I want to say that because in anything, any organization, any institution, you must have change. All right, you must have growth and development. That is something that one would expect. We're talking about here in a situation where you're talking about the message, the messaging. So, like we say, we don't have any problem in terms of, let's say, going back to school. First, teachers went back, even if we are the concern about COVID and everything. What we're saying is that now, from the different education officers or the DU, there must be one message. So if you say we're going back to school on a rotation basis, if you say, well, the protocol is this, that, and the other, then everybody should be singing the same, all right, on the same page, should be on the same page. So you don't want one coming and say to this district or to this school, all right, yes, follow the protocols, do this and to do that, while somebody else come to say to you, go to school every day and such and such. That's what we're talking about. Sit down, discuss one message.
So inconsistency, lack of professionalism within the ministry itself, you inserted that is seemed to be a growing problem within the ministry itself. Lack of professionalism.
I wouldn't say lack of professionalism in the sense, because that could be a strong word. There are persons who mean well and everything like that, so and have good intentions. What we see in here, the message, the inconsistency in the message.
Well, the inconsistency further highlights the unprofessionalism.
But that could be if you want to say could.
Okay. Where to from here? The 2 weeks you talk, so there's a pressure that these inconsistencies is presenting to the teachers. Because I know the minister, when I did speak with the minister, she did say that at the end of the day, the buck stops with the principals. And I remember that was said. So I'm agreeing with you on that the principals ultimately, they are going to determine, while the ministry provides the overarching direction, each school will be guided by what the principals they are going to do. We continue to look at the emotional stress that teachers, members of your union, they have to go through. As part of the re-entry into the classroom, I know we highlighted the emotional stress, the physical stress, the mental toll, the economic toll that COVID has had on each and every one of us, due to membership included. The 2 weeks, though, anything that you were able to say, having interacted with the teachers, where they are emotionally? Yes, they want to return to the classroom, but all of these challenges, what is their mental state like, and how does that affect the ability to deliver at an optimum level in the classroom?
Well, a good question. I would want to think that the teachers are still stressed, all right, and affected in one way or the other, because all the various concerns with COVID-19 community spread. Remember, we went back to school and such, we're not too sure in terms of testing for children and students and all those things. So you go in there and you're not too sure who is who, whether person A have COVID, whether person B, and that's what you you're going with. So that fear is still there. So one would want to say, yes, teachers would have gone back to school in spite of all these situations, but there is still some worries in spite of all those things. Those challenges are there. What one would want to say is that the Grenada Union of Teachers would have been doing its best in terms of assisting our members, to dealing with the psychological, emotional, and psychological effect. Last night we had a session with St. David's branch in terms of what professional counselors, which the union will put out its resources in terms of dealing with that for the branches. And we have sessions with all the various branches throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Pitimatic in terms of assisting our members to deal with this challenging time.
24 minutes gone past the hour. Just hold for me, Jude. I have a caller that is on the line. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Good morning.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I'm listening to the gentleman that you have on air, right? I mean, whilst I admit some of those things that he's saying is quite true, but some of them are very vague. It's not based on actual facts. It's not based on actual facts at all. And then, for instance, where he's talking about the inconsistencies, right? I mean, you can say you go back for a week or you go back for 3 days, but every day, every school will vary. There are children, there's the population and some children. Only yesterday I was talking to someone, there's a primary school out in the rural area that is under 100 children, whereas you take another one in the town of Grenville, that is hundreds of children. And my grandchildren, he's in grade 3, he's only going back 1 day per week. The other one in grade 5 is only going back 2 days per week, whereas the child in that other rural part of St. Andrews is going back 5 days per week. So there must be inconsistency because the times are not normal times. So everybody's got to put their heads and hearts together and work for the good. And you can't have people, I think sometimes he's sending out the wrong message. He has to encourage his teachers. Yes, everybody's doing their bit. Talk about parents. Talk about the emotional stress on parents.
Okay, thank you,
Talk about the children as well. It's not only the teachers, and at least they have an advantage over others because they're a little bit more intelligent to handle the situation too, you see?
Thanks for your feedback, caller. Mr. President, your thoughts?
Yes, I think that the parent or whoever the person is made a valid point and such, but I have been speaking and we have been speaking in terms of parents and recognizing the stresses that the parents are under, that the children are under. Everybody is under stress. The caller did say in terms of there are persons who are going back to school 5 days a week. There are persons who are going back 1 day. There are children who are going back probably 2 days. And that is sometimes what we are saying. We're not saying in terms of the contention here is not the amount of days. Basically, that what the PS did say and the protocol involved, that there are students in exit classes and so should go back at least minimum 3 days per week. All right? There are children based on the situation probably 2 days or 1 day per week. What we are saying and such is that it seems or it appears that there are situations where and I did not say every school and every district that is happening too. There are situations where sometimes a lot of pressure is put on probably principals and teachers to have probably all the children coming. So I did talk about the school size and everything like that. So that's what we are talking about. There is some inconsistency there, but I would always respect in terms of a caller and what the caller would say and everything.
27 minutes actually gone past the hour of 9 o'clock. It is still the point for today, the 19th day of the month of November. There's a caller on the line, but we have to take a quick commercial break. Caller, stay where you are. I will engage you in just a bit. But we have to take a quick 30-second commercial break, and we'll be right back right here on To The Point.
It's the season, Grenada, and all the action is happening on GBN. It's a mid-morning show like no other, with shopping deals, giveaways, karaoke fun, Christmas recipes, and a whole lot more. It's the season for caring, sharing, and reaching out to those in need. This the season. Weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on GBN Television, Classic Radio, and GBN's Facebook and YouTube pages. Promotion runs from November 8th to December 31st. Stay tuned to this station for more info.
Tis This The Season is made possible by Ace Hardware, Kittens Healthcare, Grenada Tourism Authority, The Country Cold Store, Grenada Paper Products, and Sissons Paints.
Thank you. Welcome back to the program. My guest this morning is President of the Grenada Union of Teachers, Mr. Jude Bartholomew. Mr. Bartholomew, we've been highlighting what, in your estimation, you determined to be a lot of inconsistencies within the Ministry of Education, and intimating the challenge and the unnecessary challenge and stress that it places upon teachers. We do have a caller on the line, though. Good morning, caller. You're alive.
Yes, I'm here. Teacher Jude, when the minister was doing her press briefing, or press conference, or whatever it was, she said that the children will be in the classroom and the teachers will be in the classroom, and they will be doing both online and in class at the same time. And I was sort of baffled as to how that will happen. I'm yet to hear a teacher asking how would we operate online and in class at the same time. So, as you say, inconsistencies, but nobody questioned her as to how would they do it. One of the media personnel asked a question. She said they will have devices in the classroom to do it, and it is baffling because the challenges is great, but like you say, teachers are not robots, and I mean, it's difficult and it's hard. So somebody needs to ask her what it is that she really wants. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Did not hear what the caller said because the caller was very low. I was kind of picking up something.
Well, I think she goes back to she was hinting to the fact that whether or not that inconsistency, that the concerns that you raised now, that whether or not that was addressed with the ministry from day one, the issue of the return to the classroom and having in-person, face-to-face involvement simultaneously with online access, and whether or not there seemed to be some sort of ambiguity from day one, and whether or not the teachers sought any clarity.
All right, good question, and that's why I say sometimes when you come on a program, you have to balance the program. You have to balance the approach. One don't want to go down on the Ministry of Education too much and such. There could be problems and such everywhere. What we are careful to say is that I want to place on record here that the teachers will go all out in spite of some of these inconsistencies and situations to teach the nation's children. The teachers are committed to that. Now, one also have to take into consideration that when dialoguing in terms of returning to school, we had our first meeting with the Ministry of Education. It was said to us that they will get back to the Grenada Union of Teachers, they will get back to the principals and such, and nobody came back. Nobody came back to us. At the other hand, when you have press conferences and other things, you would hear from the press conferences that you released that dialogue has taken place with all the teachers and the various stakeholders and those things. And what we are saying, at the end of the day, it is the teachers and the school, the principals, that have to do the groundwork in terms of doing the job and all the different things that the Ministry of Education wants to get done. And never taking into consideration the teachers basically, and the teachers have been crying out for that and to saying also, yes, you may meet with the union, you may say that's the teachers' representative body, you may meet with the principal, you probably may meet with parents and other persons, but basically in terms of meeting, why not at sometimes say, well, okay, from the Ministry of Education, let's meet with the teachers because it's not always face-to-face, you can meet on Zoom. Let's hear certain things that the teachers have to say. And the teachers basically sometimes, in spite of the situation, will give you the answers to a lot of the things and say, well, do this in terms of that and so. But
am I getting the sense, Mr. President, that there seemed to be a breakdown at some point in time? We talk about the miscommunication between the ministry and its personnel, but I'm getting the sense also that there seemed to be breakdown in communication at some level between the GUT and the ministry itself. So there's a breakdown, that misinformation, that gap at either end of the chain. That at the end of the day ultimately is going to exacerbate and add to a worsening of the situation, and isn't the best situation for all involved either way.
Well, you could be correct on this, but it also, on the other hand, one may say, well, who have the piper calls the tune, and basically turn around your weight and you say, well, okay, this is what we want from the Ministry of Education, so we get it done. We reach out, and we know we get our work done. So what we're saying, that could be true in the sense that we have to go back on the drawing board. We have to rectify that problem, probably have a better communication structure between the Grenada Union of Teachers, within the Ministry of Education, principals and teachers, parents, and everybody. The important thing there, in spite of the situation, to make it work.
Let's make it work. And I think I agree. I'm agreeing with you that there's a need for more constant dialogue, and there's a lot to be trashed out, and for us to find a middle ground as to how we incorporate traditional face-to-face learning, and you incorporate that with online facilitated. We have a caller on the line, and then we'll move on to some other issues, be it the teachers and pension. But there's a caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Yes, Mr. Cadore, good morning, greetings.
Yes,
Evidently, coming from the president of the Grenada Teachers Union of Teachers, there seems to be serious chaos within the system. No doubt we're getting the results that we have in there. But that beside, there's an additional factor. During the time I've been listening to this gentleman, he has enunciated a range, 1, 2, 3, about 4 things which, quote unquote, according to him, would have happened, and things which would have been done. My question to him is, why hadn't these things been done, and what had to have happened so that these things can be fulfilled? Thank you very much. I do hope my question is understood. Have a nice day, will you?
Thank you, sir. All the best. Mr. President?
Well, basically, I understand what the concern of the caller and such, what are some of these things and why it wasn't being done. We want to understand so that in spite of the situation, you're talking about sometimes limited resources and such from even probably from the government of Grenada, the Ministry of Education and such, and even in schools. There are major challenges. One would want to say still that put on record that they are trying their best. COVID-19 is an ongoing situation and such, and what it says that we have to have proper planning and in terms of implementation and going forward. So what happened early of the past, yes, we have to rectify it, we have to dialogue, we have to push to get it better and such in terms of make the adequate changes. But with limited resources and all those things, although limited resources should not be an excuse for probably some of the things, because in spite of the limited resources, what we can do and what we have to do, we should be able to do it to the best of our ability. But going forward, probably we'll seek better dialogue and all those things, and to make sure that from every angle and such, that things are tried to be worked out properly.
Stress, the daily stresses of life, COVID, coupled with pre-existing issues, the regularization of teachers, that has been an ongoing issue between the union and the ministry. What's the latest conversation on that?
The regularization of teachers is a matter for grave concerns. And as I would go back and say, basically, persons are teachers you have are permanently temporary for a long period of time. There are teachers out there who are temporary for 15 years and 16 years in the system. And you know the negative effects of that. They can't go to the bank in terms of doing what they have to do, get a loan and such, and move on. These persons are many of them are in basically what you call a permanent space. So yes, legally and such, they have not been officially appointed to the permanent status, but they're in a space where, so there is no contention there. Not only for teachers, but you have nurses and other persons, all right, in the public service who have been complaining for a long period of time, and teachers are getting frustrated and fed up with those things. Sometimes not going down on the young people and such, what the case may be. We appreciate when government give them a job. One notice also that with the Imani and such, the program, there are a lot lot of persons who get permanent status just basically easily. Then you have teachers now who are basically established or unestablished, and they have to go through all these pressures in the public service to be permanent and such. And this is a problem. We have been trying to deal with this matter for a long period of time through negotiations and all those things. One time you hear that you have a list here, then you go back, now you hear something else here, and all those things. We're calling on the government of Grenada, the Ministry of Education, to do the honorable thing and such, and to regularize the teachers. Remember, we have moved, and that's what I'm saying. Sometimes the problem comes up because when you move away from the normal way of dealing with those things from the public service and public sector. Before, there are a lot of years before, where after 2 years in the service, one would become permanent. Once you in an open space, all right, one will become permanent. For some reason or the other, you find that has not been happening for a long period of time. And therefore, what is the manner of contention there? After 15 and 16 years, then you say to the teacher, now, if you have to be regularized, you get 2 increments. 2 increments means you're moving up 2 places on the incremental scale, which means for a teacher who would have been in the system for 15 and 16 years, if you want to be regularized after 2 years, one could calculate the amount of money that you would have made and such. And not only with the teachers, with the rest of the nurses and other persons involved. So and this thing would become basically go further, because one would want to say some of these problems that we are having, these things must become, issues before the elections and such, that government would have to rectify these things, because these things will be, making a clarion call on.
But who's failing who, though? I mean, I find it hard to believe that you have a union and you have teachers in the system for 17 years. So is this a failure of government, a failure of the union, or a failure of both entities? You being able to press your argument for the regularization of the teachers, or you said the ministry does not seem to be bothered at all by your demands?
Well, one would want to say that you have to balance the equation here and say that this is a problem that has been developed for a long time. So in one way say that union have a part to play in this, to be fair, and government also have a part to play.
Okay,
this hold the issues.
Hold that thought. The pressing issues is a caller we actually lost. We've lost that caller because that's a conversation that we've heard, Jude, for quite some time. It's almost like a recurring decimal, a revolving door. There's this at the end of the day, Mr. Bartholomew. Add to the challenge of what we underscored as the inefficiencies within our education system.
Well, that could be in one way correct. One would understand that motivational factor there. Because if you are in the system and such, and you for all these years or for a long period of time, and one would see no movement, it means that teachers or other workers will be demotivated. And so as a way in terms of government, so that is not the only way of motivating your workers. But if you want your workers and your teachers and everybody to be motivated, then it means that this is one of the factors that you have to remedy and fix. And that's the reason why we say that we're calling on the Ministry of Education to do the honorable thing and to regularize these teachers.
Hold that thought. We have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, could you? I'm here. You come across very faint, though. Can you speak a bit louder, please?
Okay. Good morning. I thought when a teacher is appointed, at the end of the year, the principal's duty to recommend that teacher for permanent based on how the teacher performs. I thought that was the norm, that the principal recommend to the ministry based on how the teacher work, that teacher need to be permanent. And if there is a space at that time because some teachers are replacing those on study. So if there is a place and that teacher performs well, then they recommend that teacher to be in the permanent place.
Okay.
But I don't understand now that 17 years and nobody and the union just taking an issue with that. I'm disappointed.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, so I think what the caller says right or correct there in the sense that yes, the principal would recommend and such. That was the normal way of doing things a few years ago. The normal way.
A few? 17, 20, more than 20 years ago? That's not just a few.
after 2 years, the principal would recommend, once you're in a space, if somebody goes to study and then you are holding on, it means that you're not really in an open space. So that you have to wait a while.
So let me ask you, Jude. For the purpose, I need to educate, because so I get into the teaching profession. I leave today. I decide, you know what? I'm done with media. I become a teacher. I join the teaching profession. I spend my first year. The principal then recommends me for a permanent slot. If a permanent slot never arise, what happens?
Right, so it's not just the principal recommends you for a permanent slot. Basically, when you're coming into teaching, right? So one might come into teaching and there might be a vacant space, a space available. So if there is a space available, it means that based on your performance and everything like that, so when the principal recommends you, then you might get a permanent employment, permanent stick.
But Mr. President, but there's no equity, no justification to that. We live in, this is seems to me as an archaic, outdated system that's been implemented within modern times. Our population has grown by leaps and bounds. There was a day when I went to school and I knew all my teachers. You knew them from infant. They was the same teachers. We have more schools, a growing population. Certainly, that cannot be the basis upon which a teacher gets a permanent spot. That makes no sense, does it?
That is not only the basis. You have to have basically the qualification, the basic qualification, right?
So there's multiple factors then.
Qualification to do so, right?
So there's multiple factors.
Right, so there are multiple factors. So not just the space, because one could be in the system and basically you're not qualified or not even a substitute teacher, and you can be a probationer, which means you haven't really met the basic prerequisite in terms of attaining that. So that is one factor, right? But once you're talking about in terms of permanent status, teachers who have the basic qualification in terms of the maths, the language, the science, the social studies, that's for the primary school. And in the secondary school now, you're talking about the associate degree, or KIP, and then now maths and language. So once you have this, and there are a lot of teachers and other persons in the public service who have this basic qualification, all right, and meet the threshold in terms of permanent status. But from time to time, they are not been getting it. So we're not too sure if there's a political decision or whatever, that yes, we are negotiating and such, but that is in the hands of the government and the Ministry of Education. This problem is not only for teachers. You interview and you talk to nurses, you talk to doctors, you talk to other persons across the public service. The same thing is happening. So it seems it's wider than teaching, and therefore is a political decision basically to change the norm or the rule in terms of the 2 years with all the qualification, that the basic qualification and such. Government have to move to change this.
Wow. So you already have the overarching issue of teachers not being able, not just teachers, the public servants, who haven't joined the service after beyond a particular time period, not getting a pension. And you're saying that the individuals, there's this revolving door of persons just being going around and around and around, 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
So it's a good time based on the transition where you have put it now to talk about pension, because one would want to see now how all those things are affecting pension for these persons. Because if you are there temporary for all these years, remember, for pension, to attain pension, you have to be basically have a permanent status in the teaching profession. You have to have a permanent job and those things. So all the teachers and other workers who are there for all these years, you could be 18, 20 years, 25 years in the teaching profession, and then at the end of the day when you retire, no pension because you do not attain a permanent job.
What percentage though, Mr. President, of your teachers are under that status? What percentage?
Basically, it could be around a rough estimate. I'm not too sure how to do it, but it could be around probably 40% of teachers are
40%.
Yes, because you have younger teachers now. You have a lot of young teachers now who are coming into the system and are faced with this problem. And this gives me now a wonderful opportunity now to go into pension. And this is why we've been crying out for all this long period of time for pension. When you look at the situation, I just want you to give me an opportunity to probably slow down on this matter.
But before you touch pension, though, let me engage this caller, and then we'll get back to the competition. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Yeah, good morning, Jude.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Bartholomew is stating something about appointment to position in school. I would like him to find out whether their union is collecting money from a disappointed teacher. When I say disappointed, the teacher that is not appointed to the service, do the union collect money on the behalf of them? And on the appointment basis, 2 years is a person supposed to be appointed, and when they didn't appoint, what do the union doing for it, whereas that they're collecting the money as a teacher that is not appointed to the service? I would like him to tell me what is their position on that as the union. Thank you.
Mr. President?
All right, so basically what the caller said is very interesting. Automatically, once you become a teacher, then you join the Grenada, you are a member of the Grenada Union of Teachers, which means that basically your dues are paid automatically through the deduction. Whether you are a probationer teacher or any teacher, the benefits from the Grenada Union of Teachers in terms of negotiating for its members is not only about regularization, because the same teacher, even if you're not permanent as such, you would receive your 4% and you would receive all the other benefits in terms of that. So one would say the teacher has to pay the dues. What one would want to see here, if one would want to be correct in saying that the union probably have to step up the momentum. And this is the reason sometimes when you try to take probably a intense decision, if one would have come here this morning program and say, well, one would have to take industrial action to solve these problems, then you might have other persons in the society saying, well, no, you can't do something like that because you're disturbing or creating problems for the various children. So this is a cry. We want, if the duty wanted, the duty try to resolve these matters peacefully. There are a lot of things behind the scene that the public is not aware about, in some of the challenges and some of the things that teachers are faced with and other public officers. But in the interest of fairness and such for everybody, the teacher really tried to make that sacrifice. So what we're calling on now, the media, we are calling upon the society, we are calling upon the churches and such for economic and social justice for the workers and for teachers, and to push it on, so that, because if this matter can be resolved, it means that the duty has to intensify other means to solve these problems, and sometimes you don't want to go there. So this is a vexing issue, and we want this thing to resolve peacefully and such.
Amicably, so that everybody would probably want that in the best interest of the education process. 10 minutes on to the hour of 10 o'clock. Pension, yes, we did agree we get back to the pension issue. Yes.
So this pension issue is a burning issue, is a hurtful issue, is a painful issue for teachers, for public officers. And I say so, we have been calling for a long period of time. It is unconscionable. I'm slowing down here because I really want now, let's not look at this thing from any political eyes. Anybody who is reasonable in the society will see it is not easy for teachers, for police officers, prison officers, nurses, doctors, and all the other persons in the public service to do their basic duty and so the civil duty for all these years serving the nation. And after 30 years, 25 years, some people 40 years, and such, you going home begging on the street empty-handed. And this thing hurt me. Tears come out from teachers' eyes. Tears came out from teachers' eyes and other persons in the funeral of Anne-Marie Pilgrim. Anne-Marie Pilgrim, who was buried about 3 weeks ago in St. Dominic's. And why? Anne-Marie would have served for 35 years in the teaching profession. Anne-Marie had to retire because of sickness. because of sickness and such. And she retired basically at the age of, let's say, around 54, probably 55 there. And Anne-Marie had to beg. She had to do dialysis. People had to help her make cake and such. She had to make cake herself in all her sickness, to go down in Granans, to be selling cake all around the place and such, to pay for dialysis. And she had 3 strokes. She had a heart attack and all those things, and yet still she wasn't able, after all these years, to get her pension. And she died, you may say, a miserable death, hurting because of all those things. And Marie's situation represents the case and with this pension burning issue for a lot of teachers and other public officers. You have Teacher Pam, if one knows Teacher Pam from St. Rose Modern Secondary, one leg. Teacher Pam probably teaching now for about almost, you may say, 40 years. Teacher Pam has to be now basically going now with this leg, hopping on one leg to go to school. Not because, yes, if she retires now, she can retire, but there is nothing between the age of, let's say, 50 and 60 when you have to wait for 60 years to get your NS old age benefit, and it's not a pension. It is unfair to the public officers and to teachers, whereby the politicians, after 2 terms, they get their political pension, they get all the other benefits. So we cry now to the nation. We are crying out to the churches. We are crying out to other civil organizations. Yes, that matter is in the courts and such, and we're waiting for judgment. But we ask Almighty God to really bless the judge and to guide him with the gift of his Holy Spirit, so that he make the right decision in terms of coming through for public officers and for teachers. Because this too will be another matter coming up. Basically, that will be a political decision in terms of for the government of Grenada or for any other political organization, whether TGM, whether NDC, whether GULP, or all the other political organizations. They have to come out with a strong voice in terms of, and put it on the record, what is their intention with this pension. They have to solve it. The government of Grenada have to solve it, because workers right through the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique will not be making any joke and mixing any matters coming for the next election if this problem has not been solved. It must be solved. Too many persons are suffering in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique with this pension issue.
Mr. Bartholomew, we're 5 minutes on to the hour, and we're just about out of time on today's edition of To The Point. I'm listening to you, I'm hearing you, to fall in the feedback. Can it be reasonably assumed that this is a case where government, not any political party, well, government has forsaken its responsibility to its people, the hard-working citizenry of this country?
Well, I really want to thank you for saying it so. It didn't come from me, it come from him, and that is a blessing in disguise. Government basically have forsaken the workers of this country, and when you check it, it is painful, it is hurtful. Any nation who forgets its citizens, persons who have made the contribution, all the sacrifices. Before I end, one would want to see, anytime you have austerity measure, who does the government call upon? The workers, the teachers, the public officers. You have the reconstruction levy still on. You go into the IMF, who they deduct from in terms of billing back when they such. You have the workers. When you have whatever the situation in Grenada, the workers who are basically supporting the economy and building back better. And when you deduct and you take all these things from the workers, they're not getting a chance to save. They're not getting the opportunity. Government sometimes is hindering the ability or the opportunity for the workers to save because of high cost of living. You have to go to the IMF all the time. You call back on the workers. They do their patriotic duty, and at the end of the days, they have to be scrunting. So we want the government of Grenada to do the honorable thing. Let conscience prevail and do the honorable thing in terms of the restoration of pension. And what is happening, what is so painful, is that the government of Grenada did not have to wait until the court to restore pension, asking the court. They didn't have to go to the court. Just how they took it out in Parliament, the Prime Minister has the authority with the stroke of a pen to restore pension tomorrow morning or today if he wants. And so we're calling them. Too many persons are crying in the land, suffering in the land, and we ask the citizens of Grenada, do not allow this thing to happen.
It is said the voice of the people should always be the prevailing voice, and it's what should govern what government does. Thank you, sir. We've reached the end of our program. 2 minutes on to the hour of 10 o'clock. Thank you, and all the best to you. Continue with the struggle of your union and its membership. God bless. My guest this morning, President of the Grenada Union of Teachers, Jude Bartholomew. Folks, this is as far as I can take you for today, or this week, the week ending today, Friday. Certainly, but it's been a pleasure being here with you as always. And thanks for being part of this conversation. Thanks to all those of you who were actively engaged on social media. We say thank you. We really appreciate it. Continue to do what you have to do. Until then, JC loves you. Well, programming-wise here on the GBN, tis the season continues. We are heading down to the city side, which will be somewhere. I will definitely be inside of Duty Free Caribbean, and should be somewhere inside of Ace, the helpful place. Until then, JC loves you. So long, everybody. God bless.
This the season